Spotlight on Advanced by Francesca Mansfield and Carol Nuttall with Language Testing 123. Published by National Geographic Learning, a part of Cengage Learning. Copyright 2015. Unit 1. Track 1.
Mandy, this one sounds good for Joey.
Go on then. What have you found?
A child's first clock. Most children don't learn how to tell the time until they're in first grade or beyond. But with this lovely no numbers needed clock, even toddlers can learn the basics of timekeeping.
Sounds interesting. Tell me more.
Developed by two mothers, a children's television presenter Noni Anderson and artist Alison Perrin, the Woodland clock features a slow painted turtle for the hour hand, a faster grey rabbit for the minute hand, and a speedy red-breasted robin on the second hand.
Oh.
Blah, blah, blah. You can assemble a clock much like ours by printing out the art materials attached and applying them to a clock from a do-it-yourself kit. So, Mandy, what do you think? Shall we download the attachment?
Track 2.
So what's brought this on then?
Yeah, well, Bill's just had enough of living in this city. It's all the stress, you know. Not only at the office itself, but when he's to and fro in all that traffic. He's just sick of it. So he suddenly decided to pack it all in and make a fresh start. So we're off to the Isle of Man in the middle of the Irish Sea. Middle of nowhere, if you ask me. Still, at least it's not like moving abroad. He's taking up sheep farming, of all things. God knows if it'll work. But you know, Bill, when he sets his mind to something, there's no stopping him.
Well, I never. It seems a bit drastic, though.
He reckons it'll be good for us, like starting over. All I can think of is sitting alone with the wind howling outside. I mean, how many people stay there in the winter? We're used to the noise of the traffic. But I've told him I'll give it a go. Who knows? It may be the making of us.
Track 3.
So, what do you think of our ideas, Jane?
Well, overall quite acceptable, Oliver, but I'm not happy about some of the omissions.
Oh?
I mean, ignoring the details in the first 2 chapters means that members of the audience who haven't read the book will be left in the dark. They won't understand the reasons behind the protagonist's actions in the film.
Yeah, but most people have read the book. It was a blockbuster after all.
We shouldn't take that for granted, though. I feel that, as it stands, your proposal threatens to focus too much on action and special effects, leaving little room for character development.
Huh. Yeah, well, you know, this is only a rough outline of the scenes. As yet, we're not...
Okay, but personally, I would prefer the opening scene to include some sense of Jim's confusion and fear about what he's about to do.
Okay, but don't you think hitting the audience with the murder straight away creates suspense?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
But it also looks like a cold-blooded, calculated murder rather than... Look, I don't know what you got out of the book, but I wrote a psychological thriller, Oliver, and I'd like some element of the psychology to come through in the film, and not just the thriller aspect. Jim's character is a complex one, and your plans for him threaten to reduce it to a wooden stereotype.
Track 4.
OK, let's brainstorm some ideas. What new experiences have you had that you clearly remember?
I tried bungee jumping once. I'll never forget that.
Really? That must have been terrifying. I don't even like heights. But I did travel to America, a totally new experience for me.
Good. Don't forget, you also need to tell us why it was memorable or significant for you.
I was very impressed by the lifestyle there, and I decided I wanted to improve my English enough to go and study over there.
Excellent. What about you, Vasilis?
I've been swimming with dolphins in the water. It was amazing. I would love to write about that, because it made me respect animals and nature.
How wonderful. I can't wait to read about it. Massimo, what about you?
I haven't had any new or exciting experiences that I can think of.
Well, maybe you could make one up.
Well, I suppose I could say I have been to a rock concert.
Yes. And why would that have been memorable or significant to you?
I could say that it changed my life and made me want to become a rock star.
Oh, I almost forgot. I have flown in a helicopter too.
Well, we've certainly got a few ideas there.
Track 5.
OK, so you've brainstormed some ideas for your writing and chosen one. Now, we need to outline the structure. What's the best way of doing that?
With paragraphs?
That's right, Massimo. But you need to have an idea about what to say in each paragraph, and they should link together well. What's an easy way to do that?
You need to decide what the main purpose is of each paragraph.
Good. Claudine, what would be the main purpose of the first paragraph?
I think I would have to write about what made me decide to go bungee jumping in the first place.
OK, so for planning purposes, we could say what led to the experience. What else could you call that? Svetlana?
I would talk about how I prepared for my journey to America and the hopes and fears I had.
Good. So you could write about the preparations and the background to the experience then. Right. Now, what about the main body of our piece? What would we need to focus on?
It would have to be about the experience itself, describing it, our feelings, what happened.
Very good, Vasilis, and very important too. And what mustn't we forget?
An ending? And the reason why it was significant?
I would say what happened afterwards and how I felt about it later and why it changed my life.
Excellent. So, a good, strong concluding paragraph. Now we're getting somewhere.
Unit 2. Track 6.
We still don't fully understand how or why human language came about, although there are certainly a good number of theories. One main theory suggests that when men became hunters, they needed to develop a language in order to share hunting tactics with one another during the chase, despite the fact that most carnivorous animals, even those that hunt in packs, find silence to be a distinct advantage. And yet historians are agreed that the first spoken languages must have been very crude. How then could they have been of any practical use? There is, however, one theory that proposes that it wasn't men who first used language. It wasn't even women. It was in fact children who invented it and taught it to their parents. The truth is that fully grown adults actually lack the ability to learn to speak. Only children can do it. People that have never been exposed to any kind of spoken language before the age of 5, and there are a handful of documented cases, have never been able to learn to speak at all, despite concerted efforts to teach them. Similarly, children that are born deaf may have difficulty learning to make verbal sounds because they've never heard them. Children's natural propensity for learning languages is taken as read. They don't have to be taught their first language, they only have to hear it spoken around them. During the first 4 or 5 years of life, a child can learn several languages simultaneously, without being taught, without any apparent effort. Newborn babies all over the world have their own repertoire of involuntary sounds, which are useful for communicating to the mother their most basic needs, hunger, pain, or the need for attention. This is true of the young of most mammals. However, between 3 and 4 months of age, the human baby begins to emit new sounds, and before long will start to babble. This baby talk varies from country to country, suggesting that the baby is responding to and trying to imitate the sounds around him. Before long, he learns to control the sounds. He gets a response. He says "ma" and mother responds. This could be the reason why the word for mother is so similar in almost every language. It's one of the first syllables a human child can voluntarily produce. Can we be so sure that baby is really imitating mum, or could it be the other way round? Next, he's inventing his own words for objects, and his mother is using them too. Language is born. Perhaps this is why girls often learn to speak sooner and more fluently than boys, because at one time the ability to develop language was essential to the mother-infant relationship.
Unit 3. Track 7.
Speaker 1.
So I said, "Well, I'm game if you are, but I wish I hadn't. It was terrifying. The water flows so fast, with rocks appearing out of nowhere. There's no time to think. I was petrified. Never again."
Speaker 2.
Well, the long hours without sleep were exhausting, and the loneliness got me down occasionally. But I was determined not to give up, and would keep myself busy by repairing sails and ropes or sending faxes to folks back on dry land. Also, listening to music had a way of relaxing me, and was quite reassuring.
Speaker 3.
That was awesome. Absolutely incredible. A real adrenaline rush. Everything happened so fast, you've got to be on your toes and, keep control of both the board and the kite, otherwise you'll overturn, and, man, it was so exhilarating.
Track 8.
Right, that's everything. Are we ready to go?
Jane still hasn't arrived. It's not like her to be so late.
She might have missed the bus.
I don't think so. She would have phoned to say she'd be late.
She may have forgotten to take her mobile phone with her. You do that all the time.
Yeah, much to your annoyance. No, Jane's so organised. She wouldn't have forgotten her mobile. And even if she had, she would still be able to use a payphone. No, something must have happened.
Oh, come on, love. Don't worry so much. There's always a first time for forgetting things, you know. I'm sure it's... There. That'll be her now.
Hello, Jane, is that you? Oh, sorry. Yes? Oh, no. When? How did it happen? Yes, I'm on my way.
Track 9.
Speaker 1.
Well, naturally I was disappointed, but nothing I could do about it. Just one of those things, I suppose.
Speaker 2.
Honestly, you could have told me about it beforehand. Then I wouldn't have gone to all that trouble. Not to mention the expense.
Speaker 3.
Who, James? Well, I wouldn't like to say, really. I mean, I don't know him all that well. Why are you asking?
Speaker 4.
Oh, don't let him worry you. He's just a nobody. Don't take any notice of him, dear.
Track 10.
Right. My next guest is someone who I personally admire very much. Tom Masefield has done it all, whether it be climbing the highest peaks, such as Everest, trekking to the South Pole, or kayaking along the coast from Alexandroupolis on the Greek-Turkish border to the town of Agria in central Greece, where he now lives. A mere 505 kilometres. You name it, he's probably done it. Tom, welcome. Tell me, how did all this start?
Well, Tracy, I started rock climbing 10 years ago, near the town where I now live. Agria is at the foot of Pelion Mountain, so there are lots of places to climb there. I trained as a PE teacher, and I'm not only a climbing instructor for the town council, but I also teach handball and skiing for them, and water sports such as kayaking and swimming in the summer months. 2 summers ago, we took a group of 9 teenagers and kayaked down the coast from Alexandroupolis to Agria. That was an amazing experience for all of us.
Wasn't it a little dangerous being on the open sea in a canoe?
Well, I suppose it was a little risky, but we were all experienced and the kids did really well.
Did you see any interesting sea life on your voyage?
We saw lots of dolphins. They liked swimming alongside us, but from a distance. Then, one day, the leader thought he saw what looked like a sunken ship floating under the surface. But as we approached for a closer look, we realised it was a huge sea turtle. The guys in front were so surprised by the size of it, they nearly overturned. It was an amazing feeling.
So is the sea your true love?
I enjoy being on the water, certainly. But climbing is what I really love. The feeling when you're hanging from a rope, 300 metres from the ground, there's nothing like it. It's the closest we can get to being a bird.
Is it easy being a member of an international team, Tom?
Not always. At Everest, I was with a Kuwaiti, an American woman, 2 Belgians and 2 Japanese. That often caused misunderstandings. Obviously, some amusing, some frustrating. But on the whole, we got on well and became good friends. You're in close proximity with each other 24 hours a day under extreme conditions. There's going to be friction, but also you form strong bonds. Climbing is about teamwork. You have to rely on the next person holding the rope. Every mountaineer understands that, and everyone is working towards a common goal.
Did you experience any difficulties during the climb?
Well, the worst thing that happened was that 2 of the team got very bad frostbite and had to have the ends of 2 of their fingers chopped off. That meant returning to base camp for a while. But they recovered and carried on. It's one of the recognised hazards of mountaineering. Experienced climbers accept it as a risk they take.
I wouldn't like to have been in their shoes, though. Now, the trip to Everest was just part of a bigger project, wasn't it?
Well, yes. We've just managed to complete the ascent of the 7 summits, as it's known. These are the highest peaks in each continent, including Everest. The last one we attempted, Carsten's Pyramid, Papua New Guinea, proved the most difficult to climb due to problems beyond our control. We had a struggle to raise enough sponsorship money, but then we had to abandon an attempt because of helicopter failure. The next time we planned to climb it, there was an earthquake shortly before we were due to arrive. However, we succeeded in March of this year, and it was a special achievement for me, as not that many people have ever climbed all 7 summits. This time, we had a tough climb in a snowstorm, but when the Belgian climber Robert Hugh and I reached the top, it was a moment neither of us will ever forget. The culmination of a lifetime dream.
Very impressive. And I believe you've written a book.
Unit 4. Track 11.
Hi, Sally. I wanted to tell you about what happened to me yesterday, but I don't want you to think I'm being a telltale.
Tell you what, why don't you tell me about it? And I promise I won't kiss and tell.
I'll try, but I don't want you to say I told you so.
Well, you never can tell.
I can't tell you how much it means to me that you're my friend.
As far as I can tell, you're my friend too.
Yes, but only time will tell.
Track 12.
In the future, do you think it will be essential to know how to use a computer to get a job in your country, Fernando?
No, I think there will always be a need for people who don't know how to use a computer. Computers cannot do everything. For example, we still need bus drivers and shop assistants, farmers, craftsmen, and although technology may help them, it's not an essential aspect of those jobs.
What do you think, Maria?
I agree with that point.
And I also think that at some point, technology will have given us all it has to offer. And after that, people will be looking for alternatives. I mean, even today, you see that more and more people actually want to cycle to work instead of driving, or go to the gym more instead of watching TV. Technology has taken over our lives so much, we are almost fed up with it. What do you think?
Yes, that sounds like an interesting point.
Thank you. That is the end of the test.
Track 13. Speaker 1. Well, I don't know where I'd be without it, to tell the truth. There's just no other way to get around these days, unless you want the stress and pollution brought on by driving in the city. Speaker 2.
At first I hated them. Only the rich and pretentious seemed to have them. Do you remember what they were like then? Great big unwieldy things, almost the size of a briefcase. Now, of course, they fit in the palm of your hand, and I'd be lost without one.
Speaker 3. It's probably the greatest invention of all time, because just imagine where we'd be without it. I mean, there wouldn't be vehicles of any kind, except monorails, perhaps. Speaker 4. It's amazing, and great fun too. First time I've actually enjoyed doing the housework. Marjorie can get on with her writing, and I just zoom around the house with my new toy. Speaker 5.
As far as my family is concerned, it's the best invention there's ever been, because it's really made a difference to our lives. It gives us so many opportunities for research, plus we use it all the time for communication, and the kids can do their homework without having to go to the library. But I know not everyone feels the same way.
Track 14. Speaker 1. Well, I don't know where I'd be without it, to tell the truth. There's just no other way to get around these days, unless you want the stress and pollution brought on by driving in the city. I live out in the suburbs, so it's good exercise. And of course, ecologically speaking, I know I'm doing my bit to save the planet. I'm setting an example for the kids I teach as well, although you do occasionally get one of them shouting out something clever as their teacher goes by, just because they're stuck on a double-decker bus in rush hour traffic. I know which one I'd rather use. Speaker 2.
At first I hated them. Only the rich and pretentious seemed to have them. Do you remember what they were like then? Great big unwieldy things, almost the size of a briefcase. Now, of course, they fit in the palm of your hand, and I'd be lost without one. I have to spend so much of my day visiting sites, negotiating with clients, coordinating workers, and then back to the office to go over designs or tweak a plan. I use it to check the time, do quick calculations, store reminders, and then, of course, wherever I am, Harry or the kids can find me if they need to tell me something, or to find out what time I'll be home for dinner. In the old days, they would just have had to leave messages all over the place.
Speaker 3. It's probably the greatest invention of all time, because just imagine where we'd be without it. I mean, there wouldn't be vehicles of any kind, except monorails, perhaps. Boats would be okay, but planes wouldn't be able to take off. We'd all be riding horses. Good for the environment, maybe, but not very convenient these days. In fact, it's quite obvious that we'd still be stuck in the dark ages if some bright spark hadn't come up with it. I know most people would probably say the most important invention was television, or the computer, or something, but I don't think we would even have them if this hadn't come first. Speaker 4. It's amazing, and great fun too. First time I've actually enjoyed doing the housework. Marjorie can get on with her writing, and I just zoom around the house with my new toy. Compared to our old one, this has loads of advantages. For one thing, you don't have to carry a heavy load around the house with you. Secondly, there are no bags to change. You just empty the bin every now and then. Thirdly, it doesn't smell out the house because the actual engine is down in the basement. And fourthly, it's quieter too. There are several outlets in the house that automatically switch on when you plug in, but the hose is 9 meters long anyway, so it reaches every corner. Speaker 5.
As far as my family is concerned, it's the best invention there's ever been, because it's really made a difference to our lives. It gives us so many opportunities for research, plus we use it all the time for communication, and the kids can do their homework without having to go to the library. It provides entertainment as well as knowledge, and they enjoy it too. It keeps them off the streets, off the TV, and I think they learn a lot. OK, granted, there is a downside, because you don't always know how accurate the information is, and some people seem to get a kick from being abusive. But we try to teach the children how to deal with all that.
Unit 5. Track 15.
The three main types of forensic DNA testing, then, are all extremely useful, but each has its own limitations. The first type, RFLP testing, requires large amounts of DNA from a recent sample. Therefore, old evidence from a crime scene is quite unlikely to be suitable for RFLP testing. Furthermore, Warm and moist conditions usually cause DNA to become degraded quicker, so samples from crime scenes near water are unsuitable. The second type, STR testing, can be used on smaller amounts of DNA, but is still subject to the same limitations as the first type. The third type, PCR-based testing, has certain advantages over the other two, in that it requires smaller amounts of DNA, and the sample may be partially degraded. However, it still has limitations which must not be ignored. PCR testing can easily become contaminated, both at the crime scene and in the lab. This can affect the test results, particularly if lab regulations are not strict.
Track 16.
Personally, I see the idea of a national DNA database with everyone's DNA on record as a necessary evil. Yes, it has its risks, and there would need to be strict legislation to protect people, but if it were universal, surely it would eliminate the possibility of suspects being picked out at will. More importantly, the risk of almost certain detection would act as a powerful deterrent to first-time offenders, and so reduce the risk of innocent people becoming the victims of a violent crime.
Track 17.
Since the mid-1980s, when Sir Alec Jeffreys first discovered that every human being has his or her own unique genetic makeup, DNA profiling has replaced fingerprinting as the chief forensic tool in criminal investigations. Technological advances enable new techniques for testing DNA to be developed all the time, and forensic scientists are now able to solve cases from years ago. The recent conviction of John Lloyd, who attacked a number of women between 1983 and 1986, is a case in point. As a result of all the media attention, the discipline has come to be seen as glamorous, with forensic scientists now occupying centre stage in TV detective series rather than detective inspectors. Many people assume that DNA testing provides unquestionable proof of a person's guilt or innocence, leaving no room for error. Yet the controversy now surrounding the case of Barry George, convicted in 2001 for the murder of TV presenter Jill Dando, brings to light a number of problems with this idealistic point of view. One of the jurors expressed doubt about the conviction and gained support from several forensic experts who believe the forensic evidence presented in the case should be regarded as unreliable and therefore inconclusive. And this is not the only example where forensic evidence has led specialists to the wrong conclusion. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to suggest that DNA profiling has no place in criminal investigations, but what we need to clarify from the outset is not simply the merits of DNA profiling, and they are indeed many, but also its limitations. We must dispense with the idealized, glamorous view presented on TV and rather examine in an objective manner exactly what DNA testing can and cannot do. The processes involved in DNA testing are complex. The most effective DNA testing procedure to date is STR analysis. It has a greater ability to distinguish differences than the earlier type of testing, RFLP analysis, yet can be used on a smaller sample. This method analyses a DNA sample in greater detail, so there is less chance of two individuals giving the same results. STR analysis is now used together with the polymerase chain reaction, or PCR as it is commonly known, a process which enables DNA contained in a degraded sample to be analysed. The present technology allows scientists to find DNA matches with odds estimated at 1 in 37 million. But this does not mean that it is not possible for individuals to have similar matches. For this reason, strict rules must be maintained within the laboratory. And while technology has enhanced the level of accuracy, it is not perfect, nor should we rule out the possibility of human error during the process. Forensic scientists are often under pressure to produce results quickly, and this can lead to errors in judgment.
Track 18.
Hello, my name is Jill Simpson, and this is my colleague Helen Jones. And your names are?
Juan.
Berit.
OK. First of all, we'd like to know something about you. Where are you from, Juan?
Spain.
And you, Berit?
I'm from a small village on the edge of the Norwegian fjords.
And what are you doing here in England, Berit?
I'm studying accountancy at the London School of Economics and generally having a good time.
And you, Juan?
I am working and trying to improve my English.
So, how important is sport and exercise to you, Juan?
I play football every Saturday and I train twice a week.
And how about you, Berit? Is sport and exercise important to you?
Oh yes, very important. I think we all need to do some form of exercise to stay healthy. Personally, I do aerobics at a gym 3 times a week. And also I cycle to my lessons every day. I wear a scarf over my nose and mouth to stop breathing the smoke from the cars.
If you had the opportunity to take up a new activity, what would you like to do? Berit.
Well, there are lots of things I'd like to do if I had more time. And money, of course. But I think I'd really love to go horse riding. I love horses, and I like being out in the fresh air. It's difficult here in London, though, and very expensive.
Yes, indeed. How about you, Juan? What would you choose to do?
Can you repeat the question, please?
What new activity would you like to do if you had the chance?
I'd like to play water polo.
That's interesting. Why?
Because I like swimming.
OK. Now, in this next part of the test, I'm going to show you some...
Track 19.
Now, I think we'd all agree that prevention is better than cure, particularly in the case of fire. So it is vital to establish a fire safety plan in your school. Teaching staff must be instructed on what to do in case of fire. Fire alarms and fire exits must be clearly marked, and all teachers should be aware of their location. Teachers must know where the nearest fire exit is at all times and must be able to evacuate students efficiently. Therefore, it is advisable to hold regular fire drills for the whole school so that students can also be made aware of procedures. In case a fire does break out, teachers should always sound the alarm at the first sign of smoke or flames. Even if it turns out to be nothing, you will have ensured the safety of everyone in the building. Instruct your students to leave the room in an orderly fashion and move towards the nearest fire exit. If you are able to, use the nearest fire extinguisher to put out the fire. If you are unable to control the fire, leave immediately and close all doors behind you to prevent smoke from spreading. Once outside the building, teachers must check that all students are accounted for. Students must stay in their classroom groups to avoid confusion. Teachers should learn how to use the fire extinguishers in the school, and all equipment should be checked regularly by the local fire department. Doorways and fire exits must be clearly marked and kept clear at all times. This last point is most important. Now, I'd just like to demonstrate